Friday forecast time. It's the final road trip of the year, and it's at one of the best places in the Big Ten, Madison, Wisconsin, to play a football game. Sean, first, before we get into the Badgers, let's talk about last week's game against Maryland. What is the aftermath, and how does that stick around, or does this team have the ability to flush and move forward? It seems like they do, listening to Matt Rule talk about Ty Robinson's message.
Yeah, it's a similar script to how they've lost a lot of the games this year. You go back to the Minnesota game, the Colorado game, the Michigan State game, the Maryland game, all kind of had a similar theme and a feel. The Michigan game was kind of its own beast, but it's frustrating. And I think it's a residual effect of what has happened in this program the last several years, and for the fans in general to kind of watch Nebraska unravel like that. And that's where Matt Rule's job now, that's where he's good at. I think he's good at kind of reining everybody in and focusing on a new week, kind of that 1-0 mentality that he continues to talk about. And this is a great opportunity. Nebraska is struggling. There's no question. They have big questions at quarterback, but they've got a great opportunity still this week with how Wisconsin's. I mean, heck, they just lost to Northwestern by 14 points in Madison. You beat Northwestern right here. How does that not get your attention as you go on the road this week?
Yeah, that is an easy sell to your players when you just use the Northwestern comparison. Well, I got to ask you about the quarterbacks, because that's been the big topic. Who? I know it's early, but who do you think may trend towards playing this week? But it's all dependent on health.
Yeah, I think if Harburg was healthy, it'd be him. And that ankle injury just doesn't seem like it's going to heal overnight. If Harburg can't run, that takes away really what he's effective at doing, because his running sets up those shots over the top. It's all gone out the window. Jeff Sims, when he's on, is a good quarterback, but when he's off, he's one of the worst quarterbacks we've seen at Nebraska with the mistakes he's made. Chuba Purdy looked really good for 95 yards and all but one play. And the injury situation, him is the other X factor. So I don't know if there's an easy answer. All we know is Jeff Sims is the only one that appears to be 100% healthy. So it wouldn't surprise me if he was the guy, but again, it wouldn't surprise me if anything at this point happened.
The theme on Monday, Matt Rule, was accountability, and he says it starts at the top, which I thought he kept going back to it. And when asked about the turnovers, he says, well, it starts with me as the coach and then our coaching staff. But you can't avoid it. 27 turnovers in terms of the giveaways. It leads the nation. And I'm telling you, Sean, nothing bugs Husker fans more like that. They had 5 on Saturday, just giving the ball away. Yeah,
the span of back-to-back plays for Jeff Sims, I mean, that was kind of a breaking point.
In the first play of the fourth quarter offensively and the second play of the fourth quarter, yeah.
And then you go back. Harburg, you knew he wasn't right, and then you left the game at that point. He's 1 of 5, had a pick. Chuba, I can live with his mistake. I mean, this is a guy that wasn't even repping with the offense. He was running the scout team all week, and he managed to get him down 95 yards almost down the field. So you can live with that, because I do think there was some execution of that final play that fell through, and that was out of his hands in some respects. But yeah, 27 turnovers for this team, leads the country. 22 by the quarterbacks. 13 fumbles, which also leads the country for Nebraska.
Yeah, the turnover margin's at -14. It is puzzling how this team continues to turn the ball over. All right, let's talk about Wisconsin. This is a team, talk about puzzling. This is a team that a lot of people believe could win 10 games this year, and instead they have the exact same record as Nebraska. And when you look at point differential in the Big Ten, Nebraska and Wisconsin are separated by 2 points. That's how similar these two teams are.
Yeah, both teams with first-year head coaches that came with big contracts, Matt Rule and Luke Fickell. And I think, Andy, we've been through enough of these drastic coaching changes at Nebraska, unfortunately, to know they're not easy. And for Wisconsin, going to Luke Fickell is a very drastic move from the Barry Alvarez tree of coaching. They're going to an air raid system. They've got injuries. They've got a transfer quarterback. That's why in the preseason, I was one of the voters. I just was not comfortable giving them the nod. I had Iowa as my pick to win the West, and it's looking all right now. But, I mean, it's still an ugly Western division, and you knew Wisconsin was a team that was going to be in transition. They don't have the receivers to run the air raid at the level it needs to be run. So for Nebraska, if they can just manage the football, which is a big if, they can go in there and win this game. But if they play like we've seen them the last couple of weeks, they're going to come home a loser. And they've never won in Madison, as we know, since they've joined the Big Ten Conference.
Yeah, they haven't beaten the Badgers in more than a decade. And it will be an interesting scenario on Saturday, because Badger fans are not happy with Wisconsin. You saw it with the few people that remained in the stands towards the end of that game. This is a Huskers have a possibility or a potential to go in there and steal one, don't you think?
Yeah, and we've been in Madison for all of them, Andy, you and I, since they've joined the Big Ten. And you go back, think about our opening game there in 2011. Russell Wilson. I tell people that was one of the most electric atmospheres I've seen Nebraska play in, along with 2010 Texas A&M.
Absolutely.
It's right up there. And it's going to be far from that. There's going to be a lot of guys sitting in their deer hunting cabins, watching the game on TV somewhere in Wisconsin, opening day of gun deer hunting season. We had our opening day in Nebraska last week. So we were there a couple years ago when deer hunting season opened, and it affected probably 10,000 seats in the stadium, especially if the Badgers aren't in contention. And this is as far down as we've seen them, because they've got to beat Nebraska or Minnesota to go to a bowl, not a give me. And they have a 21-year streak of going to a bowl game.
It's going to be interesting. The Huskers are the underdog going into Camp Randall. It's a night game in Madison. It's Nebraska. It's Wisconsin. 6:30 start on NBC.